Hello and welcome to Tech Terrain. I'm Tony Ndoro. Good to have you with us. On this show, we'll focus on the grain industry, the opportunities and challenges that industry faces in the next few years, with a particular focus on climate change. Tobias Doyer from Sanlam gives an overview of the business of agriculture on the African continent. Langa Simela from APSA is back in studio with a focus on developmental issues and the importance of partnerships. The program closes with John Deere's showcase of their combine technology. And don't forget to check out techterrain.co.za. There's loads of bonus material that we upload there every single week to keep you updated. For now, let's begin. We're going to start this episode with a very critical subject, and that is climate change. Climate change is affecting everybody around the world, but critically the agricultural sector in Africa. We want to talk about that and also how to ensure or also maybe mitigate against some of the effects of climate change when it comes to your crop, your yield. With me to do that, I've got Tobias Doyer from Sanlam. It's a South African insurer. Tobias, good to have you with us. Are you well?
Indeed, very well, thank you. Pleasure being here.
Let's talk about climate change. Some people don't believe that there's climate change. We won't talk about those particular people. But the effects of climate change in general, from an African perspective, give us a clear picture.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. We see lots of changes around us. And that's the one thing that is certain. If you look at the ice cap on Kilimanjaro, it's been shrinking for the last 40 years. In a few years, I don't think you'll even see snow when you go up there. And that's a big reality. Another thing that we've seen this year is the Lake Victoria. It's at 13.4 and rising, which is causing havoc around the lake. So all of the game lodges and things on the side are flooded. When the lake level rises like that, the papyrus beds get dislodged and they float into the hydroelectrical plants and can clog up the system. So electricity is a problem. Yeah, and then of course agriculturally, very different to what we are seeing in South Africa. So in Southern Africa, there's a drying taking place. But closer to the equator, the guys are seeing more rain than ever before, and more intense rain, and also it's getting more concentrated. So it's definitely impacting agriculture as well. Now
yourselves as Sanlam, that also makes your jobs a bit difficult because you're in the business of ensuring not just the farm, the plant itself, but also the crop.
Indeed. So what we do is you ensure a general yield for the farmer at the end of the day. And of course, the climatic has a huge impact on that. So we need to see and make sure that we are ensuring the right farmers. To our mind, we can see that it's moving towards the north. More variable conditions obviously create more opportunities for insurers, but it's also important for the farmers to start using specific production techniques, also making sure that they use the right cultivars and plant at the right time. So these kind of things are becoming more and more important to stay ahead of the game.
I want to talk about that, the fact that the farmers now have to get smart, play smart, farm smart. Do you assist in that way at all in terms of maybe speaking with some of the people that are insured by you to say, listen, it might be better to do this in a particular way, maybe change the way you were farming before?
I think, of course, we always try to assist the farmers in that way. I think the biggest effect that we've got is we try to push the farmers in certain directions. We say we won't be insuring if you farm like that. So this is what we see as good agricultural practice, and therefore if you do that, you are an insurable risk, and hopefully we're adding to the sector in that way as well, aside from just protecting the assets against unforeseen circumstances.
Okay, so if I'm a new farmer, one of the key things I have to do is insurance. Explain to me why that is critical for a farmer.
I think the easiest way to explain it really is if you have a loss, you must have capacity to carry that loss. So either you must have money in the bank, to recuperate if you lose your truck or your crop. You must have a big deposit somewhere so they can pick that up. So it's actually part of your balance sheet So now what you do in terms of insurance, you buy at a lower price a piece of balance sheet that if something untoward happens, that asset gets replaced immediately.
Yeah.
So that's the foundation of insurance, how it's supposed to make sense for farmers. Of course, times are tough, and we take risks, and this is one of the things that farmers want to cut. So sometimes we must look at ways to make it a little bit easier and more affordable, but it also gets riskier for the farmer.
Talking about the balance sheet, what are you seeing throughout the continent? I know, Sanlam, you're expanding a lot from your South African base throughout the whole continent. What are you seeing? What are the trends when it comes to agriculture and that balance sheet that you're talking about?
Agriculture in Africa is really growing along with the populations, and I think that's going to remain a growth sector for a long, long time. And all the predictions are that we'll have most people, etc., etc. So good times for agriculture. However, what's got to change? So on the one hand, we've got specialist rose producers and vegetable producers in Kenya that fly stuff into Europe. That's amazing business that they've got up there. The big challenges that we've got are still around commodities like maize. Maize is still a little bit of a political play ball. Governments try to keep prices low and subsidize farmers to keep them going, and it gets difficult. So when you get commercial farmers, they generally tend to stay away from maize production. That's the one factor, and I see that reducing over time. The other big challenge is logistics. So even though they'll get more rainfall up in the north, to move that product, especially bulk stuff, is a huge challenge. An amazing example is at a certain time of the year, you can get Zambian grapes in Shoprite. Where Shoprite has actually encouraged production of grapes in Zambia. And now they are producing so much that they actually put it on the trucks on the way back to South Africa. So these kind of things are starting to happen. Amazing stories.
It is. I want to talk about this subsidizing, because that's always been what we're going to say, a contentious issue when it comes to African agriculture and our trying to get our products over to, let's say, the United States and even to Europe and so forth. You've got countries like the United States that subsidize most of their farmers, and that doesn't bode well for us, does it?
Exactly. So I'm very much against subsidies, from a philosophical point of view. Sometimes you need to protect industries, and that I can understand. You need to encourage certain practices, also important, but invariably you can't get rid of that subsidy once it's there. Then it becomes a political thing. So that, on the one hand, it always distorts what you are trying to do. I think South African farmers, Australian farmers, New Zealand farmers have shown that we can be absolutely competitive on the world stage without subsidies. So that's your strongest position ever. Then you're not linked to the vagaries of politicians. But and then you've always got the unfair bits about big countries trying to stimulate their own industries by dumping. So anti-dumping and making sure that you don't get subsidized product into your country is a very important thing. However, our capacity to fight is always a big challenge in Africa.
That's always a problem. Are we doing more trade when it comes to agricultural goods on the continent, the different blocks, your SADCs and so forth?
It's starting, but not nearly enough. I mentioned the example of the grapes, that kind of thing that you're seeing. But because we haven't built infrastructure, all our African infrastructure is going to the sea instead of stimulating intra-regional trade, which is really sad, because I believe that we've got so much to offer each other rather than trying to deal with the rest of the world. And we've got the right climate, we've got the right soils. Internal will cause huge economic growth, but we're slowly moving in the right direction. In Africa, you got to have a long-term view. You got to stick it out, but we are moving in the right direction. I'm very much optimistic about where we're going. Things are stabilizing. Our governments are slowly improving in leaps and bounds. Sometimes we jump back a little bit, but all things being equal, we're doing very well.
So Tobias, there's a huge drive on the African continent, whether it be minerals or whatever we're producing, for beneficiation. Are we seeing the same sort of shift in the agricultural space?
Yes, there are definitely some lovely stories about that. So I think that's going to be the first part of industrialization, because you really, for beneficiation in a certain sense, also needs to be close to the market so that they respond quickly. And that's been one of the fundamental challenges in African industrialization. You want to beneficiate here where you are very far from your final market. So agricultural industrialization, the market is already there. Excellent example would be Zambeef. In their partnership with ShopRite, they've started exporting Zambian beef into the different ShopRite stores, into different countries. Those kind of things are starting to happen. If you think about the banana guys in Mozambique, South Africa is not really a tropical country to produce bananas. So the bananas that we produce are due to our excellent farmers, not due to our excellent climatic conditions. So those kind of trade things are starting to happen. But I'm especially excited about agricultural, agro-industrial development, because that's going to be the foundation of our industrial transformation that we're looking for.
Very true, and also creates jobs, isn't it? Because it's all about jobs.
Indeed. And so instead of exporting raw product and importing jobs back, now we can start creating those jobs ourselves, consuming the product ourselves, and eventually also exporting that.
100%. Thank you so much, Tobias, for that overview of the agricultural space on the continent.
Great stuff. Enjoyed that.
Well, there you have it. If you wanted to know what's happening in the agricultural space on the continent, fantastic speaking with Tobias Doyer there from Sanlam, South African insurer that's making waves on the continent. Now, earlier we spoke about the challenges that African farmers sometimes face, and one of those challenges has got to be access to finance. Here to shed a little bit more light on that is a lady we've had before on Tech Terrain, Langa Simela from ABSA in South Africa. Langa, good to have you with us.
Thank you, Tony.
First question, pretty easy. I've got a fantastic agricultural project. Come knocking on your door. What do you require from me?
So the biggest requirement that we look out for is the repayment ability. I'll use the grain industry as an example. One of the things that you have to demonstrate is efficiency of the use of your resources. For example, they say now that 10 years ago you needed 80 to 100 liters to operate 1 hectare of land, but now that has come down to 30 to 50 liters per hectare. So you've got to be demonstrating that kind of efficiency. There's improved seed technology, improved irrigation technology. And if you have all that on board, it means your cost of production is low. It means that you have room for more profitability.
Now, we know that commodity prices obviously go up and down and so forth. Do you look at a farmer in a particular region, also incentivize them to farm a particular product or commodity?
Not really. So at the back of their mind, we'll know what commodities perform how in each of the various regions. So we'll have that detailed information, but we'll give the client or potential client an opportunity to present their case. If you present your case and you show that you can be profitable, you have mitigated all the risks that are associated with it, you have the right markets, then we'll consider the application.
Now, Langa, obviously as a private entity, as a commercial bank, you can't do it all alone. Do you partner with NGOs, government?
Certainly. I think that's what helps us a lot to enter into the developing space. Otherwise, we would not be able to. So if we were financing a developing farmer, we would definitely need somebody that's able to help them end-to-end, a technical assistant partner that shows that they're able to do all the processes in good time. We need to make sure that they've got a market where this product goes to at the end of the day. We've also had partnerships with government or government institutions at least, where they provide guarantee funds, so that when the farmer is borrowing, in case something goes wrong, then we can call upon that guarantee to recoup the money, and we don't have to chase after the client. And currently in the industry, between government and the commercial banks or the whole financial sector, there's a big discussion on blended finance scheme, whereby government is prepared to offer what we call own contributions. So, when a farmer comes to borrow money, we say, can you at least give us 40% of what you need upfront?
Yeah.
So government will contribute that and finance the technical assistance and just make sure that the whole deal is feasible, it's commercially feasible. So there's a big discussion on that. And for me, if we conclude that, it will open up financing for a whole lot of farmers that currently are not able to access funds.
Okay, we're talking about the farming aspect. What about the agro-processing aspect?
That's an important consideration, and particularly us as APSA, we're looking into that a lot more, because at the end of the day, this product has to land up into some agro-processing facility and into the market. And we feel that it's much more effective to finance the whole value chain, right from production through to processing, other than splitting the value chain and financing broken pieces of it. So if you have the full value chain and you finance that, it's much more efficient. Your returns are much better for the clients and for ourselves as well.
So Langa, I know that you have agri-specialists in APSA. What do they do?
They basically support the client's application. So if the client comes in with an application, we've got to verify that the cash flows are okay, they're aligned to industry norms. If you're saying you're producing 10 tons per hectare in that area, that is actually achievable. So they check out that information and advise the client accordingly, so that they then can submit an application that actually speaks to the region and is realistic enough for the bank to consider. So we have agri-specialists really across the country to do that.
Okay, now Langa, one of the difficulties in terms of access to finance for small to medium enterprises in South Africa, and I suppose throughout the whole continent, is that they usually complain that the criteria required by the institutions or the banking institutions and so forth is a little too high, a little too difficult.
Yeah, so when I walked into the bank 5 years ago, I also felt the same, and I thought, here I am, I'm going to help the bank make some changes. But you soon realize that those criteria are there actually to protect the client. You don't want to lend recklessly, because once we lend to you, we're obliged to make sure you pay back. If you don't pay back, we're obliged to recollect. So the criteria really are to make sure that the client has got a viable business which can be financed and pay back the loan and be able to grow. I like one example that I learned from a lady in Uganda. She was saying that she was borrowing money to set up a sugar cane mill. And I think she got a loan of for 5 years with a 30% interest rate. Mm-hmm. So, and that's because you've eroded your financial institutions to the point that they have to reduce the tenure, increase the interest rates to be viable. So my learning really from the 5 years that I've been at the bank is that we've got very strong financial institutions in this country. What we need to do is to prepare our clients to be able to benefit from the financial institutions rather than try and tear them down.
Okay, my last question is, do you have are there any initiatives out there from the banking sector as a whole to try and get young people interested in the agriculture sector?
Yes, there are various initiatives, and what we have particularly as APSA, our focus from a citizenship point of view is more education. And we've offered 57 bursaries this year to agricultural students. And it's comprehensive bursaries that include tuition, books, laptops, accommodation, and even some pocket money. So really the student is just to be ready to go to school. And what we also offering them is that we will work with them in the path during their education. So our agriculture specialists will work with them and share experience with them, so that by the time they're qualified, they don't only have the theoretical knowledge from the universities, but they have the practical knowledge from associating with the bank.
Okay, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much, Langa, for coming back and joining us.
Thank you, Tony.
All right, so there you have it. Langa is saying that you do have access to funding. You, of course, have to satisfy certain criteria, but that criteria is also there to protect you. Stay with us. Right, so we've spoken about the importance of time frames when it comes to harvesting, when it comes to planting. Right now, I'd like to speak about the importance of getting the right machinery for yourself or for your production, for your farm, if you want to stick to those time frames, whether it be harvesting or planting. And with me to do exactly that, I've got Jean Elo and also Lafras Cronier who join me now. Gentlemen, good to have you with us. I want to start talking to you, Lafras, about, we're talking about time frames and how important is it for a farmer of any size to get the right equipment if you have to stick within your time frames when it comes to harvesting or from planting aspect?
Tony, thank you. Yes, I think there's two critical windows of opportunity on any size of farm that a customer wants to get right. One is the planting window and one is the harvesting window. Reason for this is you want to plant at the optimal time to get the maximum yield and amount of sunny days on your crop. And in the harvesting window, you want to take the crop off before you have any losses in weight or any crop damages. So it's critical to have the right equipment at the right time to optimize your procedures.
I suppose you also have to look at planting from a climate change perspective as well. Are we designing a lot of the machinery also taking note of the fact that the world is changing from a climate change perspective?
100%. The world is changing from a climate perspective. Planting windows and harvesting windows is getting shorter as we speak. Planting windows probably 2 weeks today if you want to hit the optimal sweet spot. And so having the right equipment with the right technology to get that seed in the ground or the crop off the field is non-negotiable.
Jean, let me come to you. Let's talk about combine harvester, the C series, and from a John Deere perspective. Talk to me about that first before we talk about where it actually suited in terms of farm size.
Good. Thanks so much, Tony. Lafras talked about the fact that it is important to get a crop off the field at the right time. And what John Deere has done is to look for a solution that is good for what we call contractors. These are people that run the harvesting, I'll say the harvesting practice or application as a business. And so for these people, we've come with what we call the C120 combine. And this is a combine that is designed with them in mind. A lot of these people we've seen talking about somewhere in the north of Ghana, Tamale, or somewhere in Nakuru, these are people that are using very old machines. And so we've come up with this solution that will help them to be able to harvest in a very cost-efficient manner. So they'll be able to use this technology with less fuel usage. And also what we've seen is that this combine comes with a rotary technology. So with this combine, you're able to have a high throughput of your grain. And so it is a solution that is well targeted for contractors. Beyond contractors, we're also looking at people who have their own farms that are actually using manual harvesting today. And so it is, I would say, a solution that is pretty much targeted to a farmer cultivating about 100 hectares that wants to move away from using the hand to harvest into using a machine to harvest.
Yeah.
Time window, it's very, very important. So you can, with a combine, something that will take days to do or weeks to do, you can do it in a day. So.
Okay, so this is almost your first step to scaling up to machinery if you were not using machinery before when it comes to harvesting. Lafras, to you now, talk to me about the commodities one can use with the combine harvester, the C120 itself. Let's focus on the C120 within the C series itself. What can I use it for when it comes to commodities?
Tony, yes. And John mentioned Ghana and Tamale. So I would say the C120, the specific one of the models in the C series, is specifically designed to harvest rice. There is rice production in Africa. It's not only in China where we produce rice as a global population. Very, very well designed to do a good job in rice. But you can also do a selective of small grains, if it's wheat, if it's barley, if it's teff. And we even have a field conversion kit that you can change this machine over to harvest corn. One might think in rice conditions it's a little bit wet. How do you have the same machine working there? So, we've got options. Deep lug tires in the wet conditions for rice harvest. So, rice, small grains, corn. You can basically set it up as you please.
Okay. Let me get back with yourself, John. And you mentioned contractors. It sounds to me like it's a pretty good business opportunity for people to come in, purchase these. And I'm assuming as a contractor, I will then hire them out to farmers so they don't have to bear the brunt of actually purchasing this. Is that correct?
That's 100% true, Tony. And so we, as part of our activities, are encouraging people who have the heart for farming. Someone like yourself who perhaps hasn't got the time, to go into farming, to think about investing in the business. So you can acquire these units, have it move around, be in South Africa or Nigeria or somewhere in Tanzania, depending on where you want to put this machine, giving it to somebody that can provide the services to farmers who are not able to acquire the units on their own. The beautiful thing is that John Deere as a company, we've got a solution in terms of finance. So you can actually approach us, and if you're interested, talk to the nearest John Deere dealer, get a financial solution to acquire these units and have this person to work the field and then get money. What we've seen, Tony, is that people are able, after acquiring these units, to pay for it over 3 years.
Okay.
So once that happens, the machine becomes your own. And from the 3 years on, whatever you make, it's money in your pocket, right? That becomes profit. And so I'll encourage yourself, Tony, and maybe viewers watching me to look at this very, very lucrative avenue. Obviously, we need to feed Africa. Yeah. And this is a step forward towards feeding Africa.
Can be a viable business is what you're saying. And also, if I was to do that, then the first thing I would ask is, from a service perspective, what support do I get from John Deere?
If you don't mind, John, I'll take this one.
Yeah, for us.
So service is very close to my heart, and it's close to John Deere as well. Mm-hmm. We aim around the world to deliver a distinctive customer experience over the lifetime of the product for the customer, regardless of what they buy, small, big, new and even old. That's just who we are. So we've got a extensive channel up in Sub-Saharan Africa, with dealers around, with skilled technicians, trade technicians, service vehicles. And we've got access to a global dealer technical advice center called DTAC, where with a push of a button or mail, you can get in contact with specialists around the world to help you as a technician anywhere in the world to resolve your problem, so that the customer can have optimal uptime and run again. So support 100% back and sorted.
On a support level, you've also got the app, isn't it?
Yes, so on the basic machines like a C120, there's lots of technology, and as you start this business that John mentioned, and I hope you do, and you scale up and you grow up and maybe buy a big S-series machine, you can have different applications, download it on your mobile device. It helps you to set up a machine, helps you to monitor your machine, the yield you get, settings that you maybe want to remotely change. It just depends on where in the technology curve you buy a machine, and accordingly, with the size of the machine, the technology scales up as well.
Fantastic. You mentioned there the S series as well. Can I come back to you, Jean, on that one? Is that the next step up from this C series for a farmer?
So what we do, Tony, at John Deere is that we make sure that we cut across all the customer segment that we deal with. Be it a small farmer or a large commercial farmer cultivating thousands of hectares. For someone in that segment cultivating thousands of hectares, we've got the S-Series solution. And I'll let Lafras touch more on that. We have a very intelligent machine, the X600, 700 series, which is very, very intelligent. Actually studies the fields and tells you that your yields in this area is the best, or in this area is not the best. I don't want to take the win out of Lafraz. I'll let him touch on that.
That's amazing stuff, though. I mean, it's a wonderful use of technology, Lafraz.
And let me add, John, there. Thank you. So on S-Series Combine, you can download the app called Go Harvest. And if you're a well-experienced farmer or novice, the beginning of the season, you open the app. It takes you 5 minutes to download, not even. You select the crop you want to harvest. It asks you a variety of questions. Is it dry? Is it wet? Is it corn? Is it barley? You select that. You select your machine. And then it takes you through the machine front to back and it shows you with some pictures what to set where on the machine. Now you go to the field as if you a pro. Then once you're in the field, you can use the app like My John Deere or My Operation. There you can monitor settings on this machine, adjust it remotely. Doesn't matter where in the world you are, if this machine is connected through the JD link. But one key technology piece we have in the S-Series machines is Combine Advisor. It's a selection of sensors and cameras in the combine. You basically learn the combine to what it is you expect it to do, how the sample should look like, the sample of the grain. The machine constantly takes pictures and it adjusts the machine automatically to stay within how you've learned it to do. So this makes it easy for any operator to always be professional.
Fantastic stuff, guys. Lafras and John, good speaking with you. All right, so there you have it from the horse's mouth. If you want to be a contractor or be a farmer nearing harvest and you're interested in a combine harvester, get a hold of John Deere, any John Deere dealership, or you can also find them online. And that's it for this episode of Tech Terrain. We hope you enjoyed it. Go online to techterrain.co.za for loads and loads of bonus material. We'll keep you updated every single week. Join us next time on Tech Terrain as we talk about sustainability and profitability in farming. For myself, Tony Ndoro, until next time, bye-bye.